Welcome, friends, to Sci-Fi Travelers. In this episode, we'll hear the incredible story of Henry and the alien vampire Vivian. Close your eyes and get ready to dive into the adventure. Enjoy the show. I was expecting a simple reward, but they gave me an alien vampire woman. There is a particular smell to victory, and it is mostly other people's boots. I had been marching in mine for 11 weeks across the ash moons of the frontier, where the sky is the color of a bruise and the dust gets into everything. Your rifle, your rations, your last 3 functioning opinions about the universe. So when the summons came crackling through my helmet feed, ordering me up to the orbital citadel to claim my reward for services rendered, I did the only reasonable thing. I sat down on a dead war drone, ate the last of my emergency chocolate, and let myself imagine coin. Land. A bed with a mattress instead of a threat assessment. Maybe passage home if the council was feeling generous, though councils are generous the way black holes are hospitable. The shuttle ride up was the nicest thing that had happened to me in a year, which tells you a great deal about my year. The citadel itself hung in orbit like a chandelier designed by someone with too much power and not enough restraint. All spires and slow-turning rings and windows that glowed the sick, pretty green of bioluminescent light. I was escorted through corridors by 2 attendants who did not speak, did not blink at a comfortable rate, and smelled faintly of temple incense and impending doom. I made a joke about the weather. They did not laugh. I have made worse audiences laugh under artillery fire, so I took it personally. They brought me to a chamber lit only by bio-lanterns, great hanging bulbs of living light that pulsed slow and red, like the whole room shared one enormous, nervous heartbeat. The alien council waited in a crescent of robes, 7 of them, hoods deep enough to hide whatever they used for faces. I stood at the parade rest I'd been beaten into as a recruit and waited for the good part. The coin, the land, the mattress. Henry, intoned the central figure, in a voice like gravel being polite. For your valor upon the ashen moons, the frontier owes you a debt. Tonight we repay it. That's very kind, I said. I'm easy. Anything with a pillow, honestly. They did not respond to this, which I've noticed is a thing powerful people do when they've decided the script does not include you. Instead, the central robe raised one long hand, and from the shadows at the far end of the chamber, chains rattled. She stepped into the red light, and every clever thing I'd been saving died in my throat. She looked, at first glance, like a woman pale as the inside of a moon, skin so white the bio-lanterns painted her in shifting rows. Hair like spun silver fell past her shoulders. Her eyes were a deep, impossible crimson, and they found mine with the flat, appraising boredom of someone reading the ingredients on a ration bar she did not intend to eat. And her ears, long, elegant, tapering to fine points that rose above that silver hair, swept back in unmistakable, weaponized contempt. She was chained at the wrists, and she wore those chains the way a queen wears a crown she plans to melt down later. We present, the council announced with the reverence of people who have rehearsed, the last of her bloodline, a living weapon of an ancient and feared people. She is yours, Henry, bound to you that you may bind her to our cause. There was a silence. I filled it because I always do. Sorry, I said. I think there's been a filing error. I was told there'd be land. The crimson eyes flicked to me, genuinely, for the first time, as if I had briefly become worth the calories of noticing. You may name her, the council continued grandly, ignoring me with real professional skill. Her true name is Serafina, but that name carries history. Call her Vivian. I don't want to name her, I said. I don't name things. I lost a lizard once and cried for a week. Can I please just have the land, even a small amount of land? I'm not proud. She is worth 1,000 parcels of land, said the robe. See, that sounds like a woman who'd hate being given away as a party favor, I said. And I already have enough people who want to kill me. Vivian, Serafina, whoever she'd decide to be once she'd finished sizing me up like a butcher pricing meat, tilted her head. Something crossed her face then, slow and dangerous. Not gratitude, not hope. It started as pure glacial disdain, the look of a predator who has been handed to a peasant and finds the peasant beneath even her hatred. And then, at the very edge of it, just for a heartbeat, before the chains and the red light, and the seven-robed liars closed back in around us both. It cracked ever so slightly into curiosity. I had survived the ash moons. I realized with the sinking certainty of a man watching his simple mattress recede into the void, not survived this. They gave us guest quarters, which in the language of the citadel apparently meant a room the size of a supply closet with a window, a cot that folded out of the wall with a wheeze of pneumatics, and a door that locked from the outside. I noticed that last part immediately, because 11 weeks of war teach you to inventory the exits before you inventory anything else, including your own feelings. Vivian stood in the center of the room, still chained, still radiating the specific chill of a woman who has recently been regifted. A servalock at her wrists hummed faintly, some council-issue restraint that pulsed the same sick red as the lanterns outside. She watched me cross to the cot, she watched me sit. She watched me, I suspect, the way a cat watches a laser pointer it fully intends to murder. So, I said, this is nice, cozy, terrible, both. She said nothing, which I was learning was her preferred method of communication and also, somehow, the loudest one. I got up, walked over and took her chained wrists in my hands. Her eyes went wide, the first honest reaction I'd gotten from her, and I felt her go rigid, coiled, ready to do something I would not enjoy. So I did the thing quickly, before either of us could think better of it. I found the release seam on the servalock, keyed it with the override code they'd so helpfully tattooed onto my summons chip, and the restraint fell open and clattered to the floor. She stared at her own free hands as if I'd handed her something obscene. There, I said, stepping back to a respectful and tactically sound distance. You're not a party favor anymore. You're just a very intimidating woman standing in a closet with a man who cries about lizards. Why, she said. Her voice was low, cool, precise, the first word she'd spoken to me, and she made it an accusation. Why would you do that? Because I don't own people. I barely own a change of socks. I sat back down. Also because you were about 90 seconds from figuring out how to strangle me with those chains, and I'd rather you have to improvise. Something flickered across her face, and to my complete astonishment it was irritation, not gratitude, irritation, as if I'd interrupted something. I had a plan, she said stiffly, for killing me. An elegant one. She flexed her freed fingers, and there was real, wounded pride in it. 7 moves. You would not have felt the 4th. Now it is ruined. You have taken my chains and my afternoon. I laughed, I couldn't help it, and it seemed to offend her more than anything the council had done. She drew herself up, and the red lantern light slid down that silver hair, and for a moment I forgot she looked mostly like a woman and remembered hard that she was something the whole frontier had learned to fear. You should be afraid of me, she said, quieter now. Give me a reason that isn't the interior decorating. So she told me, slowly and with the flat contempt of someone explaining fire to a moth. Her people were old, older than the council, older than the citadel, old enough that the frontier's oldest ghost stories were just badly remembered eyewitness accounts. Their biology ran on blood, yes, but not the way the campfire tales screamed it. Blood to her kind was fuel and fire both, a thing they could read, could taste history in, could draw a person's health and lineage and lies out of a single drop like ink from water. It made them physicians once. Then it made them weapons. Then it made them extinct, one useful atrocity at a time, until there was exactly one of them left standing in a supply closet being pitied by a soldier. Everyone who has ever held my chains, she said, wanted to point me at something. The council is only the newest hand. Her crimson eyes fixed on me. And now the hand is you. I'm a very bad hand, I offered. I have terrible aim off the battlefield. Ask my lizard. The corner of her mouth did something. Not a smile. I want to be clear. more the ghost of the memory of the concept of a smile. And she looked at me then not as a captor or a peasant, but as a genuine, irritating puzzle she had not expected to be handed. "You are strange," she decided. "I've been told, usually right before people give me an alien vampire woman." She almost laughed. "I saw it happen and get strangled at birth, and I counted it as the finest victory of my entire military career. And that was when I heard it, faint, above the wheeze of the cot and the hum of the dead servalock on the floor. A small wrong sound, high in the corner where the wall met the ceiling. A click. Vivian's head snapped toward it before I'd even finished turning. Her whole posture changed, the disdain gone, the predator awake, and she pressed one pale finger to her lips. We were not, it seemed, alone in the closet after all. The click, it turned out, was a listening bead. A little chrome tick no bigger than a seed, wedged in the seam where the wall met the ceiling, its single lens glinting red in the lantern glow. Vivian crossed the room without a sound, rose onto her toes, plucked it free, and considered it the way you'd consider a bug you'd found in your soup. Then she crushed it between two fingers. It made a small, satisfying, expensive crunch. "That was probably transmitting," I whispered. "Then they know I found it," she said, "and that I am unbothered." She let the chrome dust fall. "Also that you cry about lizards. The whole council knows now. You are famous." I want it on my record. She almost smiled again. I was starting to collect these near misses the way other men collect medals. But the humor drained out of the room fast, because Vivian went still in the particular way that predators go still, and told me what the bead meant. She'd suspected it from the moment they'd unveiled her, the ceremony, the robes, the theatrical generosity. The council did not give away living weapons. The council positioned them. I wasn't the lucky recipient of a reward. I was the handle. Decorated war hero, conveniently famous, even more conveniently disposable. The perfect public hand to hold a leash the council wanted to pretend it wasn't holding. They'd point her at their enemies, and if it went wrong, they'd point the blame at me, and the frontier would nod along because who wouldn't believe a story about a monster and the soldier who lost control of her? "So the reward," I said slowly, "was never for me. The reward was you asterisk," she said. "For them, a face for the leash." She tilted her head. "I am almost impressed you worked it out. I had assumed you counted on your fingers." "I count on my fingers when the numbers are sad asterisk," I said with dignity. "This is a coping mechanism, not a limitation." I didn't get to enjoy the line. The lights died. Not dimmed, died, all at once. The bio-lanterns outside guttering to black like something had reached up and pinched the citadel's heartbeat shut. In the dark, I heard the door's exterior lock disengage, which should have been impossible without the council's key, and then the corridor beyond filled with a sound I knew from the ash moons in my bones. The soft, purposeful footsteps of professionals who kill for a living. "Hunters," Vivian breathed, and there was something in the word that wasn't quite fear. It was older than fear. It was recognition. The door hissed open, and the first one came through low and fast. A lean silhouette in matte armor that drank what little light there was. A mono-edged blade already sweeping for the space where a startled man's throat would be. It was a very good strike. It would have worked on almost anyone. It did not work on me, because 11 weeks of ash had made me a man who flinches correctly asterisk. I dropped. The blade combed the air over my scalp, and I put my shoulder into the hunter's midsection and drove us both into the wall hard enough to rattle the cot off its pneumatics. And then Vivian moved, and I finally understood what the frontier had been so afraid of. She was not fast the way soldiers are fast. She was fast the way bad news asterisk is fast, there, and done before the sound catches up. A second hunter cleared the doorway, and she was simply asterisk inside asterisk his guard, one pale hand closing on his wrist, and I heard the blade clatter, and the man make a sound I'd rather not describe as she turned his own momentum into the wall. She didn't waste a motion. She didn't waste a breath. In the dark, her crimson eyes were the only warm thing in the room, and they were the least comforting light I have ever fought beside. The one I'd tackled got a hand free and went for a hold-out weapon. I introduced his face to the folded cot. The pneumatics, at last, found their purpose. Then it was quiet. In the ringing way rooms get quiet after violence, both hunters down and the two of us breathing hard in the dark, back to back without either of us deciding to be. I could feel the cold coming off her skin. She could, presumably, feel me sweating like a man who'd been promised a mattress and given a war. "You fight competently," she allowed, which from her felt like a parade in my honor. "You fight terrifyingly," I said. "I mean that as the compliment it clearly is." One of the hunters groaned. Vivian nudged him with a bare foot, thoughtful. "They tracked me across 3 systems for this," she murmured. "They will not have come with 2. She glanced at me, and there it was again, that crack in the disdain, wider now, something almost like a partnership trying to be born in the worst possible circumstances. "We should leave. Unless you would prefer to stay and explain the bodies to the council, whose bead you helped me crush." I looked at the wreckage of my guest quarters, my mattress, my quiet retirement. "You know," I said, hauling the fallen hunter's blade off the floor, "I really was just here for the land. We got off the citadel, the way most bad decisions get made quickly, and with insufficient planning. The docking ring was a chaos of guttering emergency light and alarm klaxons that couldn't decide which crisis to announce. So they announced all of them at once, which is exactly how I feel most mornings." Vivian moved through it like she'd been born in emergencies, and I followed, and we came out into a berth full of ships I could not afford and one I could. A cargo hauler so old and so ugly that the council's registry had probably forgotten it existed out of politeness. "That one," I said. Vivian looked at it. The hull was the color of a healing bruise, streaked with the scorch marks of 100 atmospheric entries it had no business surviving. Something dripped off the landing strut that I chose to believe was condensation. "That," she said, "is not a ship. That is a crime scene with an engine. It's a classic asterisk. I was already keying the hatch. They don't make them like this anymore, legally. We made it aboard, we made it off the ring, and we made it into the black with 2 council interceptors peeling out of the citadel's shadow behind us. Right up, until I fed the haulers' engines everything they had, and the ancient rust bucket did the one heroic thing in its long and undignified life, coughing us into a hard burn that left the interceptors eating our exhaust. The citadel fell away behind us, a chandelier shrinking into the dark, and then there was just the star-glittered void and the 2 of us and a coolant system that had begun, ominously, to scream. It screamed for 3 days. This is the part the war stories never prepare you for. Not the battle, but the aftermath, the long dead hours in a tin can with a person you're still deciding whether to trust. Close quarters do a strange thing. On the citadel, in the red and the ceremony, Vivian had been a legend, a weapon, a problem. In the galley of a screaming cargo hauler, arguing with me about whether the coolant leak needed fixing now asterisk or after dinner, she became something far more dangerous, a person. "You ate the last ration bar," she said, on the 2nd day, with the quiet menace of a woman who had once described a 7-move assassination as asterisk elegant. "You don't even eat," I pointed out. You do the blood thing, the file thing. That is not the point." She folded her arms. "It was asterisk mine asterisk. I was saving it. I enjoy the ritual of despising human food. You have taken my chains, my afternoon, and now my breakfast. You are the most expensive gift I have ever been. I fixed the coolant leak after dinner." She held the light, and she did not say thank you, and I did not expect her to, and somewhere in the shared irritation of it, something thawed a half-degree. It was late, by the ship's arbitrary clock, when she finally told me the real thing. We were wedged in the cockpit watching a nebula slide past, a slow bloom of violet and gold, the kind of view that makes the universe seem briefly like it isn't trying to kill you. I'd made the mistake of asking her what it was like being the last. She was quiet for a long time. The coolant system, mercifully, had stopped screaming, as if even it knew to shut up. "You outlive the ones who knew your name," she said finally. "That is the part the stories miss. They fear the fangs. They should fear the arithmetic." She watched the nebula. "I have been a legend for longer than your people have had a word for asterisk history. And a legend is a lonely thing. A legend does not have anyone to eat the last ration bar with. It only has people who want to point it at something." I thought about the ash moons, about the squad I'd buried there, one thin marker at a time until I was the last man standing who remembered their faces. "I get it," I said. Not on your scale, but I've done the arithmetic, the lonely math, where you count who's left and the number keeps getting smaller, and you start to wonder if you're the one doing the subtracting." She turned and looked at me then, really looked, the crimson eyes not appraising for once, not weighing me for a leash or a threat, just looking. And the disdain that had armored her since the red chamber was simply, quietly gone. "You are still strange," she said softly. "You keep saying that like it's a diagnosis." "It is." And this time the smile made it all the way out, small and reluctant and real, and it was worth more than any land the council could have given me. Then the scanner lit up. I leaned forward and the warmth went cold in my chest. A signal, a tracking pulse, faint but steady, painting us from ahead. Not behind where the council was. Ahead. From the one refuge in this whole star-forsaken sector I'd told her we could trust. The signal was coming from inside our safe harbor. Vivian looked at the blip, then at me, and the predator woke back up behind her eyes. "Your friend," she said quietly, "is expecting us." The refuge was a mining station called Cradle, bolted to the side of a dead asteroid like a barnacle that had given up on the sea. I'd trusted it because I'd trusted the man who ran it, Owen, an old quartermaster who'd once smuggled me antibiotics and worse jokes through a siege line, and who I'd have sworn on my buried squad would never sell me. That was the trouble with swearing on the dead. They can't call you an idiot afterward. "We could not go," Vivian said, as Cradle grew in the viewport. "We could turn this crime scene around and fly it into the nearest star. It would be a kinder death than the coolant system." "He might not have betrayed us," I said. "The signal could be automated, a welcome ping, Owen's sentimental." "The signal," she said, "is a targeting lock wearing a welcome ping's clothing. I have been hunted for 400 years. I know the difference between asterisk hello asterisk and hold still asterisk. We went anyway because we were low on fuel, lower on food. And I am, at my core, a man who has to see the knife before he'll believe in it." Owen met us at the airlock with a grin and open arms and eyes that wouldn't sit still, and I knew before he finished saying my name. You learn a man's tells in a war. You learn them best when he's about to use them on you. "Henry," he said, too warm. "And you actually brought her. Good, that's good." "Owen," I said, "who's listening?" His grin cracked. Behind him, from the corridors of Cradle, the hunters came, more than two this time, a full pack in that same light-drinking armor, and at their center a figure who was not a hunter at all but something colder. A council envoy, robed, hooded, hands folded like patience made flesh. "You have to understand," Owen was saying, backing away. "They don't want asterisk you asterisk, Henry. They never wanted you. They just want asterisk her asterisk, and the price they offered. Do you know what it costs to keep a station like this breathing?" "I've got 60 people." "You've got 60 people," I agreed. "And now you've got 2 more you're feeding to the dark. Great math, Owen, real quartermaster work." The envoy spoke, and its voice was the sound of a contract being signed. It told us with the flat courtesy of the truly powerful what all the chains had really been about. Vivian's blood was not merely fuel, not merely a file to be read. It was a asterisk key asterisk. Somewhere in the deep frontier the council had found a thing they should have left buried. A dormant weapon from her people's oldest and worst days. A doomsday engine sealed by a lock that only the living cipher of her bloodline could open. They didn't want a leash on a monster. They wanted the one drop of blood in the galaxy that could turn a tomb back into a gun. 400 years, Vivian said softly, and there was something terrible in how quiet she'd gone. 400 years I have run, and never once did any of them tell me why I was worth the chase. My own people sealed that thing away. They died to seal it, and you would spend the last of us to break it open. You'd be honored, the envoy offered. Remembered. I have been remembered, she said. It is overrated, it is arithmetic. And then she did the thing I should have seen coming, the thing that broke my heart clean in half. She stepped forward past me, hands rising, surrendering, giving herself up. Because that was the shape of the trap, wasn't it? They'd take her either way, and if she went willingly, maybe the fool who cried about lizards got to walk out of cradle alive. No, I said, Henry. No. I put myself between her and the envoy, which was, tactically, one of the stupidest things I have ever done, and I have charged a gun emplacement holding a knife and a grudge. You don't get to do the noble arithmetic. I've done the lonely math too, remember. I know how it feels to be the last number. You are not subtracting yourself to save me. I refuse to be the reason. I already have a whole moon full of reasons, and I am full up. For one heartbeat, she stared at me like I was the most baffling thing in 4 centuries of being hunted. Then Cradle's lights hit us. Owen, God bless his guilty sentimental soul, had hit the station's emergency purge, venting a whole corridor of atmosphere in a shriek of decompression alarms. And in the chaos, he screamed one word at me. Run. His last honest act. It cost the hunters their footing, and it cost us skin, and it cost me a blade across the ribs I wouldn't feel until later, but we ran, the two of us, back through the airlock and into the screaming hauler and out into the black with the envoy's ship already spinning up behind us. We made the jump wounded. Vivian was bleeding silver from a graze along her arm. I was bleeding the ordinary red from my side and pressing my hand against it and laughing in a way that probably wasn't entirely healthy. You are hurt, she said, kneeling over me, and for the first time there was fear in her voice, not for herself. I've had worse. The lizard bit deeper. I caught her wrist. Her hand was cold and it was shaking. You were going to leave me. I was going to save you. Same crime, don't do it again. I held her gaze and the ship hummed around us, and out past the viewport the stars streaked into lines. We do the math together from now on. Both last numbers, adds up to 2, that's not lonely, that's a asterisk unit. She looked down at me, silver-blooded and furious, and at last, entirely certain of something. You, she said, are the most expensive gift I have ever been given. But this time she said it like it was worth the price. We hid in the bones of a dead comet for 11 days while I healed and Vivian planned, and somewhere in there, the running stopped feeling like survival and started feeling like cowardice. I noticed it first. She noticed it a heartbeat later because she notices everything. You have the look, she said. She was cleaning the hunter's blade we'd taken off the citadel, the one good weapon we owned, turning it in the pale light of the comet's ice. What look? The look my people got at the end, the look that says I am tired of being prey. She set the blade down. It is a stupid look, it gets you killed. It also, I said, gets you hunted, eventually, one way or the other. I sat up, which hurt less than it had, which was its own small victory. Vivian. They are going to chase us until one of us runs out of galaxy. We can keep subtracting ourselves across the frontier, one refuge at a time, or we can go back and ruin their arithmetic. Dismantle the whole thing. The council, the weapon, the leash, all of it, at the root. She was quiet. Then slowly that near smile of hers surfaced. You want to attack the citadel, she said, with a crime scene that has an engine, one soldier who cries about lizards and me. When you say it like that it sounds insane. It is insane. But you're smiling. I'm appalled, she said, smiling. So we built a war out of spare parts and old debts. It turns out a decorated hero, even a disposable one, is owed a great many favors across a great many bars, and I called in every last one. A gunnery sergeant who'd lost a leg on the ash moons and gained a grudge against the council that ran deeper than mine. A trio of smuggler pilots who hated the Citadel's tariffs more than they feared its guns. A slicer named Nora who could talk her way into any system that had ever been foolish enough to be built, and who took one look at our hauler and asked if we'd stolen it from a museum or a landfill. Both, I said. It's a blended family. We armed the wretched thing beyond all reason and most laws of physics. Nora bolted a mining laser to the ventral hull where a cargo crane used to be. The smugglers welded on-point defense turrets that had last seen service in a war nobody won. The gunnery sergeant, cackling, rigged the coolant system, the screaming, treacherous coolant system, into a venting weapon that could dump a superheated cloud into the face of anything foolish enough to tail us close. The hauler went from crime scene to war crime scene. I'd never been prouder of anything that ugly. Vivian planned the inside. She knew the Citadel's shadowed corridors the way I knew the ash moons in the body, in the bone. She knew where the biolanterns hung and which servos guarded which doors and, most importantly, where they'd taken the dormant weapon her people had died to seal. Because that was the true target, not the council. The asterisk tomb asterisk. As long as it existed, as long as her blood could open it, they would never stop coming. So we would go down into the deep frontier vault where they'd hauled the thing, and we would make certain that no drop of anyone's blood would ever turn that tomb back into a gun. The night before the assault, the makeshift fleet slept, and Vivian and I stood on the hauler's cracked observation deck watching the star we'd staged behind Burn Slow and Orange. She'd been quiet a long time. So had I. We'd run out of the easy jokes, the ones you use as armor, and what was left underneath was the harder, truer thing. If we do this, she said, and it works, and the tomb is sealed forever, I stop being a key. She kept her eyes on the star. I stop being worth the chase. I become only a person, the last of a dead people with no purpose anyone would fight to own. Sounds like freedom. It sounds like being no one. I turned to her. The starlight caught the silver of her hair and the impossible red of her eyes and those long ears that had, somewhere over the screaming days and the shared arithmetic, stopped being the mark of a monster to me and started being simply asterisk hers. You've never been no one, I said. You were a legend and a weapon and a key, and every single person who ever looked at you saw a thing they wanted to use. I look at you and I see the woman who's furious I ate her ration bar, who does elegant 7-move murder and then complains about the paperwork, who was going to die to save an idiot she'd known for a week. My voice did something I didn't plan. That's not no one, Vivian. That's the only someone I've got left, and I'd very much like to keep her. The predator was gone from her face. So was the legend and the weapon and the key. What was left was just her, looking at me like the arithmetic had finally, impossibly, come out in her favor. You are, she said quietly, stepping close, the most expensive gift I have ever been given. You keep saying that. I have decided, she said, to keep it. And then, with the star burning gold behind us and a war waiting on the other side of morning, she kissed me, cold lips, warm meaning, 400 lonely years and one buried squad all subtracting down at last to the number 2. Then we went to war. We came in loud, because subtlety was never going to fit through the Citadel's front door and neither was our hauler. Nora spoofed the docking authority with a forged manifest so absurd, a shipment of ceremonial council incense, 6,000 crates of it, that the traffic controllers waved us straight through, presumably too baffled to object. Then the smugglers' turrets opened up. The mining laser carved the docking ring's shield emitters into slag, and the gunnery sergeant, howling with joy, vented the coolant system into the face of the first interceptor that tried to close. It went dark and tumbling. The treacherous screaming coolant system had, at long last, found its true and violent calling. Your ship, Vivian observed as we blew the airlock and ran, is finally good at something. Don't let it hear you. It'll get proud and break down. The corridors were exactly as she'd promised, biolanterns pulsing red, shadows deep enough to drown in, servos and guards, and every layer of a fortress that had never expected the leash to come home holding a knife. But she knew every turn, and I knew how to clear a room, and we moved through the citadel's heart like the arithmetic finally running the other way. Nora's voice crackled in my ear, peeling doors open ahead of us. The gunnery sergeant held the docking ring. The smugglers kept the sky busy. And down we went deeper, toward the vault where they'd buried the tomb her people had died to seal. The council was waiting for us there, of course. 7 robes in a crescent, the same theater as the Red Chamber where this all began, and at their center the envoy from Cradle, hands folded, patient as ever. "Henry," it said in that contract voice, "you were given a reward. You have turned it into a rebellion. This is poor gratitude." "You gave me a person and called it a party favor," I said. "That's poor gratitude. I'm just returning the energy." Behind them, the thing itself waited on a cradle of humming machinery, the dormant weapon, a black seed pod the size of a gunship, its surface crawling with a script older than any language the frontier remembered. A single receptacle glowed at its heart, patient and hungry, waiting for one drop of the right blood to wake it. It was, I'll admit, the most frightening object I have ever stood in a room with, and I once shared a foxhole with a live warhead and a man who wouldn't stop humming. "You cannot destroy it," the envoy said. "The sealing script is bound to her bloodline. Only her blood opens it. Only her blood closes asterisk it. You have brought me the key, soldier. I should thank you." And there it was, the trap inside the trap, the reason they'd never simply killed her. The tomb needed her either way, to open, or to seal forever. They'd been so certain we'd come to break the thing open that they'd never once imagined we'd come to bury it deeper. Vivian looked at me, I looked at her. 400 years of being hunted, 1 week of being known asterisk, and a single choice standing between. "You do the honors," I said. "It's your family's paperwork." "Elegant," she said. 7 moves. You said nobody feels the 4th. You will feel all of them. I want you to." She stepped to the tomb, and she opened the graze on her own arm, silver welling in the red light. And where the envoy expected her to unlock the weapon, she pressed the wound instead to the sealing script, and poured herself into closing it. The black seed pod screamed a sound I felt in my fillings. The ancient script flared, ran, rewrote itself around the truth of her blood, and the receptacle at its heart didn't wake. It died. 400 years of her people's dying wish, finished at last by the last of them of her own free and furious will. The envoy lunged. It was fast. Vivian, weakened, silver drained, was slower than I'd ever seen her. I was not. I put myself in the gap the way I had at Cradle, the way I would apparently keep doing until the universe took the hint, and the hunter's blade we'd carried since the citadel went where it needed to go. The envoy folded. The council's contract voice cut off mid-syllable, which I found deeply satisfying. Then Nora blew the vault's containment, the smugglers punched a hole in the sky, and the whole rotten scheme came down around us as we ran, the tomb dead, the leash broken, the conspiracy unraveling in real time as 60 station managers and 100 bought officials suddenly discovered they'd backed the losing arithmetic. The frontier's oldest weapon stayed a tomb. Its last living key walked out on her own 2 feet, leaning on a soldier who'd meant to retire. They gave me my reward in the end. The surviving council, scrambling to look reasonable, offered me everything the first ones had dangled and more: coin, land, a title, passage home, an actual mattress. I stood in a bright, clean chamber with no bio-lanterns and no chains and listened to them name the price of my silence and my service. I looked at Vivian, unchained, free, no longer a key to anything, no longer worth the chase, no longer anyone's weapon but her own, just a woman with silver hair and long ears and red eyes, watching me with the arithmetic held open between us, waiting to see what number I'd choose. "Keep the land," I told the council. "Keep the coin. Keep the mattress. That one hurts, but keep it." I crossed the room to her. "There's only one thing here I actually want, and it's not something you can give me. She's not a reward. She never was, she's a asterisk choice, and it's hers, not yours. The council did not understand. They never had. That was rather the whole problem with them, but Vivian understood. She looked at me, at the idiot who wouldn't take the land, who cried about lizards, who kept stepping into the gap, who turned a party favor into a partner and a legend into a person. And the last of the disdain that had armored her in that first red chamber was simply, finally, gone for good. "You are the most expensive gift anyone has ever been given," she said, "so you keep telling me. I am done being given." She took my hand, cold fingers in warm ones, two last numbers adding up to something that would never be lonely again. "I am staying, because I choose to. Write that on your record, soldier." Out past the citadel's windows the stars had stopped conspiring. For the first time in 11 weeks, or 400 years, depending on who was counting, the frontier was quiet. I'd gone looking for a simple reward. I'd walked away with the only one worth keeping. The end. Vivian and Henry's story ends here, friends. I have a small request for you, friends. If you enjoyed the story, please hit the like button, leave your thoughts about the story in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Sci-Fi Traveler for more stories. See you in the next story.